Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions. The mystery of the Spear of Destiny, the relic Hitler believed gave him supernatural power. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. In March 1938, hours after German troops marched into Vienna, Adolf Hitler made a personal visit to the Hofburg Museum. He had been there before, in 1909, as a penniless art student sleeping in a men's hostel. What drew him back, according to one account, was a relic displayed in the imperial treasury, a battered iron spearhead mounted in gold and silver, labeled as the lance that pierced the side of Jesus Christ at the crucifixion. Within days of Austria's annexation, the Spear of Longinus, also called the Holy Lance, the Spear of Destiny, was removed from the Hofburg and transported to Nuremberg under Arm D. Guard. According to Trevor Ravenscroft's 1972 bestseller, Hitler believed possession of the spear conferred power over the destiny of the world, and that losing it meant death. On April 30, 1945, U.S. forces under General George Patton captured Nuremberg and took possession of the lance. Hours later, Adolf Hitler died in his Berlin bunker. The coincidence is extraordinary, but there are several problems with the story, including a carbon dating result that places the spear's manufacture 6 centuries after the crucifixion. So what is the Vienna lance? What did Hitler actually believe, and what does the evidence show? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the world of history's most enduring unsolved crimes, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Every unsolved crime is a failure, not just of the investigation, but of memory itself. The witness, who might have placed the suspect at the scene, has died. The physical evidence has degraded or been lost in a storage room. The lead detective retired 30 years ago. The files exist, but the institutional knowledge that made them legible is gone. Cold cases are, in a very literal sense, history events that have receded from the living present into the documentary past, accessible now only through records, artifacts, and the unreliable memories of survivors. And yet cold cases do get solved. The history of forensic science is partly a history of cold case resolution. Cases that sat dormant for decades until a new technology, DNA profiling, digital facial recognition, isotope ratio analysis, genealogical databases, provided the key that previous generations lacked. The Golden State Killer was identified 50 years after his first known crime by genealogical DNA matching. Multiple historic murders have been solved through mitochondrial DNA extracted from hair samples thought to be too old and degraded to yield any useful information. The past is not as sealed as it seems. What cold cases teach us about crime is often as important as solving them. They expose the limitations of investigative practice at their time, the tunnel vision that focused on the wrong suspect, the forensic contamination that destroyed evidence, the jurisdictional rivalry that prevented agencies from sharing information. Examining cold cases is an act of institutional self-examination, an attempt to learn, across decades, from the failures that allowed the perpetrator to walk free. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns, in science, demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Spear of Destiny, the relic Hitler believed gave him supernatural power, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Multiple relics claim to be the Spear of Longinus, the lance used by the Roman soldier to pierce Christ's side at the crucifixion, as described in John 19:34. Competing claimants include the Vienna lance, Hofburg, a Vatican lance in St. Peter's Basilica, a lance in Krakow's Wall Cathedral, and the Echmiadzin lance in Armenia. The Vienna lance was part of the Holy Roman Empire's imperial regalia since at least 1000 AD, carried before emperors from Otto I through the Habsburgs as a symbol of imperial power. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen. Instruments malfunction. Researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered Trevor Ravenscroft's book The Spear of Destiny, published in 1972, describes Hitler's 1909 encounter with the Vienna lance in the Hofburg and claims he became obsessed with its supposed power over world destiny. Ravenscroft said he received the account from Dr. Walter Stein, an Austrian occultist who knew Hitler in Vienna. Stein died in 1957, 15 years before the book was published, making his testimony impossible to verify. No corroborating primary source confirms Hitler's specific obsession with the relic. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this. And that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. Problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine Germany annexed Austria on March 12, 1938. Within weeks, Hitler ordered the Vienna lance, along with the rest of the Habsburg imperial regalia, transferred to Nuremberg under SS escort. The lance was displayed in St. Catherine's Church in Nuremberg as part of a display of German imperial heritage. Whether this reflected personal supernatural belief or political theater, using medieval imperial symbols to legitimize the Third Reich, historians cannot definitively resolve. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, on April 30, 1945, U.S. Army Lieutenant Walter Horn led a team that located the imperial treasury, including the lance, in a reinforced vault beneath Nuremberg. General Patton took personal custody. That same afternoon, Adolf Hitler shot himself in Berlin. Ravenscroft presented this timing as causal. The loss of the lance cost Hitler his supernatural protection and his life. Historians note that by April 30, 1945, Berlin was surrounded, and Hitler's death was inevitable regardless of any relic. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the Antioch lance, a separate relic discovered during the First Crusade in 1098, appeared at the most strategically convenient possible moment, during a desperate siege when the Crusader army faced certain defeat. After the lance's discovery, the army rallied and won. Contemporary chronicler Raymond of Aguilar's described its appearance with evident credulity, but modern historians regard the Antioch lance as almost certainly manufactured to boost Crusader morale. A practice well documented in medieval relic culture, where demand for holy artifacts reliably exceeded supply. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. Carbon-14 dating of the Vienna lance was conducted in 2003 by scientists at the University of Vienna. The iron spearhead dated to the 7th century AD, approximately 600 years after the crucifixion. A gold sleeve pin found inside the assembly matched 7th century metalwork techniques. This does not make the lance historically unimportant. It was a genuine artifact of the Holy Roman Empire, carried before Charlemagne and his successors for nearly 1,000 years. But it conclusively rules out any direct physical connection to 1st century Judea. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation, and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Spear of Destiny, the relic Hitler believed gave him supernatural power. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the Vienna lance is a genuine relic with supernatural power over world destiny, Ravenscroft's central claim, based on Stein's account. Hitler obtained it to gain dominion over history and lost power when Patton took it. This narrative, compelling as storytelling, cannot be verified. Its primary source died before the book was written. The carbon dating places the lance centuries after Christ, and the correlation between Patton's capture of the lance and Hitler's death is explicable by the military situation alone. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence. But it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the lance is a genuine medieval artifact with no supernatural properties, but its history as the central symbol of Holy Roman imperial authority made it politically significant to Hitler. In a purely symbolic way, he wanted the symbols of German imperial greatness, and the lance was the most important of them. This mainstream historical view accepts that Hitler ordered the lance transferred, but denies any evidence of personal supernatural conviction beyond political instrumentalism. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the spear is a 7th century fabrication with no historical connection to Calvary, created during the period when demand for Christian relics drove widespread manufacture of claimed sacred objects across the early medieval world. Its subsequent career as a symbol of imperial power is historically significant regardless of its origins. Hitler's engagement with it reflects his interest in Germanic imperial mythology, not any private metaphysical belief in its supernatural properties. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree, that is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Spear of Destiny, the relic Hitler believed gave him supernatural power, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes carbon-14 dating conducted in 2003 placed the Vienna lance's manufacture in the 7th century AD, confirmed by metallurgical analysis of a gold sleeve pin found inside the assembly. This definitively rules out a 1st century origin. The dating does not reduce the lance's historical importance. It was central to Holy Roman imperial ceremonial from Charlemagne onward, but it eliminates any physical connection to the crucifixion and undermines the supernatural narrative entirely on evidential grounds. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented. Ravenscroft's book cannot be independently verified. His claimed source, Walter Stein, died in 1957. No diary, letter, or document from Stein corroborating the Hitler Lance obsession narrative has been located. Hitler's own writings and recorded conversations do not mention the Lance in supernatural terms. The transfer of the Lance to Nuremberg in 1938 is documented but equally explicable as part of a broader program of appropriating Holy Roman imperial symbols for Third Reich legitimacy. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the multiplicity of Holy Lance relics, Vienna, Rome, Krakow, Armenia, and the Antioch Lance, is characteristic of medieval relic culture, in which sacred objects were manufactured, traded, and claimed with minimal scrutiny. Raymond of Aguilar's contemporary account of the Antioch Lance's 1098 discovery describes finding it after a vision, a narrative pattern typical of manufactured relics. The documentary and archaeological evidence collectively supports the conclusion that no physical object surviving today has a verifiable 1st century connection to the Passion narrative. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Spear of Destiny, the relic Hitler believed gave him supernatural power. Now, we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Vienna lance is displayed at the Schatzkammer, Imperial Treasury, in the Hofburg Palace, Vienna. Its carbon dating results noted in the exhibit description. Ravenscroft's The Spear of Destiny remains in print and widely read, despite its unverifiable sourcing. No credible historical evidence supports the claim that Hitler held genuine supernatural belief in the lance beyond its value as an imperial symbol. The lance's real history, a 7th century artifact that became the central symbol of Holy Roman imperial power for 1,000 years, carried before Charlemagne and every emperor through the Habsburgs, is remarkable enough without supernatural embellishment, and that history is thoroughly documented. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Spear of Destiny, the relic Hitler believed gave him supernatural power from the historical record. Through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Spear of Destiny ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.